So here's a quick lesson video on picking technique. I get a lot of questions on picking technique just because I think my right hand looks so funny when I'm playing. I use this grip on the pick, which some people will call like the reverse grip or the George Benson picking grip. I'm not going to call it that because I'm not George Benson and I'm not an expert on George Benson by any means, but it's on the pad of the index finger and the pad of the thumb, and when I take the pick to the strings, it is this sort of angle, right? So the pick is cutting through the strings that way versus the standard grip, which would be this way. I've always held the pick like this from the time I started playing guitar, but what I used to do was I would anchor my wrist on the bridge like this, and my picking motion was kind of like this, you know, like my palm was kind of flared out like that. Very like upstroke oriented, I would say, like kind of like Pat Metheny, I feel like plays kind of like that. But what I did around 2016 or 2017 was I was, kind of fed up with my right hand for a while and felt like it wasn't really allowing me to execute the ideas that I wanted to be able to. So I started studying the technique of George Benson, Dan Wilson, did a lot of transcriptions of both of those guys, Isaiah Sharkey as well. He does that sometimes. Sometimes he'll kind of move to like more of a standard grip, it seems. But I saw that they were holding the pick the same way I was, but they would usually have their palm or their hand like floating off of the body of the guitar, have a couple fingers planted here, which just feels way more like loose and open than this does. This feels like really tight, especially when you get into faster picking stuff. It feels like there's a lot of tension there. So if I play a little bit, right? So it feels like, compared to this, I feel like I have way more control over articulation, dynamics. I feel like I can be more in control of where the pick motion is coming from. So sometimes I'll do, this motion, so kind of like from the index finger and the thumb. Sometimes I'll do the wrist, and sometimes I'll do more of the forearm motion or elbow for faster stuff. Just again, more options, more variety, more control. But I will say that I think all of this stuff that I'm about to describe can be achieved with the standard grip. There's like, billions of guitar players that use this and just like shred like crazy. So I think if you are using this grip, I would not recommend switching to the reverse grip, just because I don't think it's worth it. But I think for me, this, again, just because this is the way that I played since the time I first started playing guitar, is the thing that feels most comfortable. I do think the tone is different for sure. This is like much more bright, like the initial attack, I think. Can't even do it. I can't really, get it to feel as comfortable as the reverse thing, but this feels much more soft and mellow, I think. Right, like more light, I think. It's also because, this kind of places you closer to the neck, I think, but it's also like as mellow, or a little less mellow, but like closer to the bridge too. Right, this is like more quacky to my ears than this is. This is like kind of aggressive. So the grip is the least important part, I think. One of the most important parts, I think, is using the rest stroke, which is, borrowed from like a classical guitar technique from what I understand. And the idea is I use downward rest strokes. So if the pick is, if I do a downstroke on the low E string, the pick is going to rest on the A string, and the upstrokes escape the string. So the motion is like, right, so you hear like a lot more power in the downstrokes than the upstrokes. And this, just helps to have like a natural barrier that the pick is resting against. It feels like it makes things more accurate, allows you to relax a lot more. It's not necessarily a speed thing. I feel like you can play, fast if you're just doing like free strokes, like kind of playing on both ends of the string. But the rest stroke is helpful also for changing strings, right? Which is probably the hardest part about picking. I think a lot of people can tremolo pick on one string really fast, but when it comes time to change strings, there's so many combinations and possibilities that it just makes it difficult, right? So I'll use kind of like a pentatonic scale as an example for this, but the idea is that, if you have an even number of pick strokes on a string or on different strings, it's easy with the rest stroke. Like it's predictable, right? So I have two groupings per string up until I get to the high E string. So, and then I have four there. All right, so this just feels comfortable. Kind of feels like the same motion I would use if I was just playing on one string. But what starts to happen is in the more complex language that you learn, more decorated phrases, all that kind of stuff. You can't always ensure that what you're playing is going to be even over here and even over here. And if it is, I feel like that's almost like letting the technique dictate too much of what you play, which can be good, but I think ultimately like the left hand should be more in control of what the right hand plays. So if I have an odd number of notes in this hand, I will usually do a hammer on or a pull off to kind of keep things in check over here. So a good example would be, instead of doing that 4 notes on the first string, so like that. So that's with 3 notes on the first string. So I did A, hammer on the C, and then upstroke on A, and that upstroke allows me to go to any string from there, right? So, it's just helpful for string changing, right? The hardest thing I think about that is coordinating the 2 hands, which is where I think slow practice is really useful. Because if both hands are just moving super fast and they're not in sync, it's going to sound sloppy. But you want to apply this to bebop stuff. I spent a lot of time, taking phrases from solos that I transcribed, or even phrases that I came up with myself, and I would like write the picking directions above them, just to be like really deliberate about it. And then I would take those licks and play them over tunes, like improvise around them, all that kind of stuff. And I really think that it helped to have something that I was playing the exact same way every time, because that makes it easier to measure your progress with your technique. But after a certain point, I did that for maybe like 3 years or so. That was like kind of my main way of developing my technique. And then I just threw it all out the window, and just like I was saying before, let the musical ideas dictate more of the technique that I use. So a good example, like I do a lot of this is like a Pat Martino thing, right? So that's F sharp on the 5th string, D on the 6th string, and then just down chromatically, right? So that is against the rules technically of like the picking mechanics I just described, but it still feels comfortable, right? So it feels comfortable because I'm starting on an upstroke, using that to escape, right? Right, so if I did that like in a longer phrase, right? But if I did the opposite of that, like starting on a downstroke, it just falls apart, right? And it's because you're getting into this inside picking thing, which is really hard to be consistent with, I think. But again, ultimately it's like I'm just going by feel after a certain point, which I think it's good to understand like the mechanics of how things work. Like, for example, let's take, this crazy George Benson phrase. How did he play it? Understanding how he played it, and then just kind of doing what you will with that information. Like, maybe sometimes it feeds its way into your practice. Maybe sometimes it doesn't, right? So if you want to check out any more of this stuff, I do have a picking masterclass. It's on my website that I'll put in the description below. It's been on my website for 4 or 5 years now, and I think I might take it down soon and like put up an updated one, just because I have some like different perspectives that I would want to share at this point. And also things about, like, you know, gear. I think I could be a little bit more detailed on like string gauge and pick thickness and all that kind of stuff. Would be really good to have in there. So check that out if you want. Feel free to put any questions that you have in the comments below. Always happy to help. And happy holidays. Take care.